What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Episode 150 of the Pro Wrestling Experience here on ChicagolandSportsRadio.com in a special podcast form here. You can follow us at Twitter at PW Show. I'm at Twitter at Josh Lopez CSR. You can follow our first guest of today's show at Twitter at JDScoop82 and all of his great platforms for interviews on YouTube. Also, all the great stuff he does for MTV and Starstruck Media Corporations out of England. And he's the host of the Gorilla Position on TalkSport. Welcoming James Delow to the Pro Wrestling Experience. James, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Let me ask, is the podcast out already, or did you record it yesterday?
Part of the show was recorded yesterday. Another part was recorded this morning. And TalkSport are working as we speak to get the podcast to drop both on iTunes and TalkSport.com/WWE. So it should be available in about 30 minutes.
Awesome. For those who don't know, James hosts a podcast alongside with Rob Lee called The Gorilla Position. James, tell us a little bit about your experience in the wrestling media, what else you do on the side besides wrestling. Tell us a little bit about what you do out in England, all the great media stuff you do.
Well, I mean, I sort of grew up just wanting to be in the media. I grew up a huge WWE fan, as so many boys did when they were younger. I haven't quite grown out of it. But yeah, I just started working in TV when I was about sort of 14, really. I started doing work experience and intern placements at various TV channels because I was obsessed with filming everything. You know, always used to have a camcorder in my hand, just filming family occasions and making short films and that kind of stuff. And alongside that was my obsession with wrestling. And so I've been working in TV since, well, for longer than I care to imagine, longer than I care to remember now. And just on the side, I my love for WWE just grew. I was really interested in the production values of WWE. You know, it's not just the entertainment, but being from a TV media background, I loved the actual show they were putting on. And I started up my own production company with my friend and now business partner, and we just started working with a lot of outlets here in the UK and the US who I thought would like WWE content. Like you mentioned, MTV, we do a lot of work with them. We produce like behind-the-scenes movie specials for them, and their demographic is very similar to the WWE demographic, so I just kind of married the two, and I approached WWE, and I said, you know, I've got these platforms like MTV, huge exposure for your brand. This was at a time when WWE wanted to do more with the press. I think there was a time when they were quite closed off to the press being involved in what they do. But then, you know, they were quite open to it, and so it sort of grew from there. And for the last 3 years, I've been producing backstage interviews with some of the biggest names in WWE. I've kind of met everyone, I think, bar people like The Undertaker, who doesn't seem to do much press, funnily enough. And yeah, it's kind of grown from there, and then I started Gorilla Position when I got TalkSport on board, because again, they realized there was big crossover potential. WWE were going down the entertainment route. They were keen to get these big stars on their station, and so they gave me a slot for the show. So it's all fallen into place very nicely.
We've been doing this show here for about 3 years now, and I got to cover my first WrestleMania last year at the age of 20, and I got to see you walking around actually with Frank the Clown doing some stuff for Mania media stuff. So I'm curious for you, James. What was how old were you when you covered your first WrestleMania?
Well, I first attended a WrestleMania. In, God, what year was it? 2007. I went to Mania 23 in Detroit, headlined by Shawn Michaels, one of my favorites of all time, versus John Cena in the main event. And so, God, 2007. So how old was I then? I'm 33 now. That was, 8 years ago?
Wow.
So, yeah. So that was my first WrestleMania, and I just attended as a fan. And then I also went to 25 in Houston with the classic Shawn Michaels Undertaker match. So that was an incredible experience. But the first one I attended as a member of the press, as it were, was WrestleMania 29 in New York.
Nice. Now it
was amazing.
You've been building a great brand for yourself. Like I mentioned before you came on, the YouTube channel, you get to cover a lot of the big red carpet events for WWE, SummerSlam weekend when they was out in LA, and of course Mania. I know it's a hard working process, trust me, but do you feel it's worth it at the end of the day, or is this sometimes with your work schedule kind of takes you out of being a fan and you're kind of jaded to it because you're covering it so deeply and you're invested to it? Because I do the show for the fans that still want to be fans. Yeah, I break down and do analysis and stuff, but this is not a show to like lay the smart down, if you will. So from your perspective, James, do you feel like you're not allowed to be a fan anymore because you're so deep into it, covering it as part of the press?
It's a good question. I mean, I think like anything, if what you love then becomes your job, it does become a job, and there are aspects of it where you think, I definitely get weeks where I think, man, I can't watch any more WWE, or I can't, usually on a Friday night when I'm getting my train home, I so often listen to the other wrestling podcasts and stuff, but there does come a time, especially when I'm heading into the weekend, where I just think, I'm just going to listen to some music and switch my brain off from WWE, because, you can be overloaded. But at the same time, I am very lucky and fortunate to be doing what I'm doing. I feel in a really privileged position, the fact that I get to cover this stuff as a job, and all the time or most of the time I should say, it's really exciting. I get to meet some of my heroes, some of the legends of WWE I've had proper long sit down interviews with, and that's kind of pinch yourself stuff. After moments like that, you think, God, I'm incredibly lucky. But I'm still a fan, and I think what gets me most is the fact that I have a production company that I run here in London. We do a lot of other kind of TV shows and online content that's away from WWE. It's more kind of film-based and comedy and entertainment and music and that sort of thing. And so I try and spread my interests. I try and make sure my life isn't completely taken over by WWE, because I think, it's healthy to kind of spread your interests, I think.
Yeah, I totally see what you're coming from, and it's kind of interesting perspective from my end, because I'm only 21 and I've listened to a lot of shows out there, and there's a lot of podcasts and media members that grew up watching wrestling in the 80s or 70s and 90s. So I feel there's not like a lot of balance with today's generation with today for the wrestling in the past, because like in the 70s you had that not grudgy, but like very hard-hitting blood and also good storytelling. The 80s was over top with characters. You had a mix of that in the 90s, and then the whole attitude era stuff. But in today's wrestling, my only issue is that I can't define what today's wrestling is. Is it politically correct wrestling? Is it wrestling where wrestling fans moan about it no matter what happens? So WWE's damn if they do, damn if they don't. In the eras of the past, you knew what type of wrestling you're getting. So do you see where I'm coming from with that, James? Or do you feel there is a certain type of wrestling with today's wrestling?
No, I do completely get that. I mean, I think you're certainly right. WWE are damned if they do, damned if they don't. I think, so many fans, so many smarks, so many people online just spend day in, day out criticizing the creative, criticizing their decisions, not knowing the full facts that go behind these decisions that WWE make. And I mean, on Gorilla Position, for example, we try and be as positive as we can. I mean, this week's show, there are a couple of moments where I'm sort of digging my heels in a bit, because there are certain aspects of Raw that I didn't particularly appreciate. But, overall, we try and be as positive as we can be, and make it a celebration of WWE, because at the end of the day, we keep going back. Even when we hate it, we still watch it. It's got a weird grip on us all. I think the modern era of the show it's kind of strange in the fact that on one hand it's all quite politically correct and very PG, but then there'll suddenly be an angle or a match where you see blood or you see some extreme violence, and you think, well, that's not quite PG. You know, I found it amusing that the sponsors of TLC in December, which is all about, you know, tables, ladders and chairs, destruction, brutality, that was sponsored by Toys R Us. And I thought that was a weird mix. But, you know, so I do think it's a bit kind of bipolar in that respect. But they're doing the best they can. You know, they've got investors to please. They're a publicly traded company. They've got fans online to please. They're wearing a lot of different hats at the moment. So it's. I think they're always going to run into problems. But I think generally they get it right.
Let's talk about the Royal Rumble, and we're talking to James Delow here from the Gorilla Position podcast, which you get on iTunes or TalkSport, and also on this. I'm sure James has all the information out at his Twitter account at JDScoop82. All right, buddy, let's talk about the Rumble, and this is not the first time the title that was on the line in a Rumble match, but this is the first time that actual champions in the Rumble match. Do you like this scenario, James, or do you like the traditional Rumble match as it is?
I mean, I sent a tweet out when they first made the announcement, when Vince got hold of the mic. I think maybe it was, 2-3 weeks ago, and Reigns had just got the better of Vince at the end of Raw, and so he got on the mic and he said, right, that's it, you're putting the title on the line against 29 other competitors. As soon as he said that, I sent a tweet out saying, now I'm interested. And you know, I do think it's got people engaged and excited about this Sunday's event. It's certainly something different. We haven't seen the title on the line since '92, and you know, the match when Flair famously won the gold. But as you say, this is the first time it's being defended. I think it really does open it up. It excites me. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they do, you know, how they book it. I think there are now effectively 30 different ways they could go.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's an exaggeration. There's obviously some people in the match that aren't going to pick up the victory. But I think it's exciting. I think my one problem with it is that I feel like the show doesn't really have a main event now. And when I say main event, I mean a world title match, because I kind of feel like the card is missing that one-on-one title match encounter. And for me, the new match that has taken that place on the card is Dean Ambrose, Kevin Owens. So that has quite a main event feel to me, especially with the last man standing stipulation.
That's interesting. I think from my end, I like this scenario because in the past couple years, you know, obviously we dealt with the Boo Birds with Batista winning and Roman Reigns winning, and in the past couple years, the Royal Rumble was usually known to be the melting point of starting new feuds for WrestleMania, where you get multiple Mania matches built out of just that Rumble match, and it hasn't been like that for the last couple of years. And I think that's one of the cool aspects about this, even despite all the injury issues they got going on. I'm really interested to see where they go from here. One of the best part about this Rumble, James, is you could say it's predictable with possibly Triple H coming in and winning and screwing over Reigns, but for me, I kind of feel it's unpredictable because honestly, I don't know what's going to happen at WrestleMania or at the Rumble, and that's kind of a good thing. You don't always need the answers.
No, I mean, I always say it on our show, when it's really truly unpredictable, that's when it's most exciting. And I know this, you know, the current spate of injuries that have happened over the last couple of months and the huge list of talents that aren't available, it has kind of forced WWE's hand to do something new and different and fresh and original. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I mean, I think, to pick up on your point, the last two Royal Rumbles, I think, yes, the endings have been controversial with Batista and then Roman Reigns, and the crowds really didn't like it for the last couple of years. But I actually think the match quality has slipped as well, and I think part of the problem is that they haven't been setting up lots of WrestleMania feuds within the Royal Rumble match. You know, you've got that hour, you've got all those competitors out there. Like a great example, I can't remember the year, I think it was maybe 2005, I want to say, they set up Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle within the Royal Rumble match, and then they went on at WrestleMania 21 to have a barnstormer. So, you know, I feel like it's not just the main event title picture that's, you know, it's not just that match that can be formed and created within the Rumble match. I think you want those other storylines, those other feuds to come out of the match.
That's a great point. And also, Goldberg and Brock Lesnar stemmed out of that Royal Rumble match. However, the payoff wasn't that great, but absolutely, I that Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels Mania match was a classic. I think I watched it a couple weeks ago. It never gets old. I love watching that match.
Phenomenal match.
Speaking of Rumble, it's always known for surprises. Last year we had Bubba Ray return to the WWE. In your opinion, James, who would you like to be? Which surprises would you like to see at this year's Rumble match?
Do you know what? I've been asked this a lot, and I kind of weirdly I get a bit of a brain blank. My brain just goes to mush when you ask me this question. It's kind of like when I go on Spotify and I think, right, I have all the music in the world. What do I want to listen to? Mm-hmm. And I just can't think of any music to type in. Okay, who would I want to see? Do you know what? Weirdly, I'd quite like to see Batista return. I think he is I know it didn't work a couple of years ago, but he is a proper main event draw now. He's a legit Hollywood star. Everyone loves him. He's done so much press over the last couple of years for his movie stuff. I think everyone's realizing what a cool guy he is, and I think the fans would be really pleased to see him back. Whether that is a deal that's happened, I have no idea. But he would be a cool entrant. I don't know, the Bushwhackers.
You know what? I wouldn't mind that, especially seeing their Hall of Fame speech last year. I wouldn't mind seeing those guys back in the Rumble match. That would be funny. Batista,
they'd bring some comedy. I'll tell you one guy who has never really got a proper send off. Apparently, he's done with in-ring action. But if he was to have one last kind of mini run between now and Mania, that would be Christian. I think he could bring a lot to the Rumble match and maybe have a send-off match at WrestleMania in Dallas.
That's not a bad idea. I think that'd be really cool. And I thought there was always this one storyline that I wish that went a little bit longer, but unfortunately Christian decided to leave WWE and went to TNA. This is like 2005. I think I was 10 at the time. It was a feud where he was kind of turning heel and he was going against John Cena. I thought there was a lot of money left out of the table with that feud, and then they just went into Cena versus Jericho, and then we all knew what happened there. Christian, in my opinion, is probably the most underappreciated performer in wrestling history besides Kane.
Christian's awesome, man. He's superb in the ring. He's brilliant on the mic. There's this story that's circulated for years that Vince McMahon simply just didn't like Christian's face.
Oh, God.
And that's why he never got this huge push. Whether there's any truth to that whatsoever, I have no idea. But I've always loved Christian. I think, he's great at the comedy. He's great at the serious stuff. He had some brilliant matches with Randy Orton. I think he defeated Orton to win his first World Championship, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And, love him. He's got a lot of charisma.
The Wyatts had a major impact on the ending of Raw this past Monday night. I didn't see it coming, but I should have, especially when the Wyatts cut off Vince McMahon the week earlier on Raw. I don't know if it's going to happen where Bray actually wins the title. I think it would be a cool scenario. I'm not going to give up hope and be glass half empty in this. But in your opinion, James, what was your thoughts on the end of Raw? Did you like seeing the Wyatts lay out both Reigns and Lesnar, or you thought you would do it a little differently?
It's funny, this one. I'm always a bit torn. Whenever I see Brock Lesnar being beaten down, I instinctively don't like it because I think Brock Lesnar should never be beaten down. I just, he's the monster. He's the beast. He's such an attraction. He's such a pay-per-view draw, and he's a legit superstar. And so there's part of me that doesn't like him being beaten down. But that said, I was really, really pleasantly surprised to see the Wyatts looking so strong. I feel like they've been booked very strangely over the last 6 months, really. Bray has always gone on TV saying he's the new face of fear, and then he's lost every single major match that he's had. And I know he was programmed against The Undertaker, but still, I think Kane and Taker versus the Wyatts at the Survivor Series, that should have gone the other way. I think that was the perfect, especially it happening on the Undertaker's 25th anniversary of arriving in WWE. I think if he had been beaten down on that event, on that show, that would have really made people take the Wyatts incredibly seriously. So I think that was a missed opportunity from a booking standpoint. And so since then, I kind of feel like they've been drifting a little bit. Their program with the ECW originals was fun, but I think they're well on their way to doing something serious now, and I think it's about time. And I really think we'll see Bray and potentially the other Wyatts in certainly the upper the like right at the top of the card, maybe not in the main event, but very much in a strong position at WrestleMania.
Let me ask you this, James. Do you see any comparisons between Bray Wyatt and Mick Foley from a character standpoint? Because for me, Mick Foley lost a lot of matches. You could probably say he wasn't booked the greatest all the time in the Attitude Era, but people always still latched onto him whether he was a heel or a face. I kind of see that similarity with Bray Wyatt right now. So do you see any similarities between Mankind and Bray Wyatt?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've never really thought about that. I mean, obviously, in their physical appearances, they're fairly similar. I think the one thing that Mankind, Mick Foley, had during his time, especially kind of around that Attitude Era time when he was in main event matches, he lost a lot. He always had a human element. Even when he was a heel, people related to him, and people liked him. He was sort of this troubled soul, and he was always quite sweet. Even when he was really menacing, he always had this sweet characteristic to him. And I think Bray doesn't have that yet. I don't think many people relate to him. He's got a cool entrance. People put the flashlights on their phones, and it's a great spectacle. He cuts a brilliant promo, but actually those promos aren't saying much. They're not touching people. People, I don't believe, are making an emotional connection to him. And I think that's what's missing from Bray, and hopefully that'll come over the next few months. But I think that's probably the biggest difference between Mick Foley and Bray Wyatt at this stage.
We're talking to James Delow here on the Pro Wrestling Experience on ChicagoLandSportsRadio.com. I've been covering SmackDown, doing play-by-play articles for SmackDown for the last 5 months at WrestleZone.com, and it's a great opportunity to be more into the product where I'm not distracted by social media or letting other people change my opinions on a product. I actually cover it and see what's actually going on. And I feel there's more character development on SmackDown than there is on Raw at times. And the new addition with Mauro Ranallo on commentary has been another great booster for SmackDown, which in some ways I feel is a very underrated show out of all the wrestling shows that are out there. Because, yeah, you have the spoilers out there, I understand. But have you got a chance to see Mauro on SmackDown yet, James? And what's your thoughts on it so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan. I haven't heard much of his work. I obviously know a bit about his history now and realize that he's been a WWE fan for a long, long time, so it's kind of a dream job for him. I mean, we were saying a couple of weeks on the show that whilst he sounds incredibly professional, he obviously knows what he's talking about, and, he's calling the matches really well and really professionally. There's that sort of, again, this emotional connection that I think is going to come over time. It's like when I hear Michael Cole's voice. I've known Michael Cole, not personally, but, I've known him on TV since I was about 15 or 16, and it's the same with Jim Ross going even further back, and it's the same with Jerry Lawler. Even now with JBL, to a certain extent, you kind of know these guys, and I feel like I need to know this new commentator a lot more before I sort of connect with him emotionally and really, really listen to what he's saying and the stories he's telling. But he's definitely going to get there because he's brilliant, and everything that everyone says about him is really positive. I believe Renee Young recommended him to WWE and put a good word in for him. That's the story I heard. So yeah, I mean, obviously this guy's going to be great, and as you said, a really, really good addition to SmackDown, which actually is a really solid show.
You brought up Renee. Is there going to be a part 3 with your interview series with Renee? I got to know, man.
So many people ask this question. I get tweets every week asking when's round 3 happening. Me and Renee were actually messaging a couple of weeks ago. We are trying to sort out the date for the interview. I'm imagining it's probably going to happen within the next month or so, maybe as we build up to WrestleMania. But yeah, it's obviously something I want to do. It's something she's really keen to do, which is great. I feel really, really pleased about the fact that we've had 2 really great interviews before, and the fans have really picked up on them, and they've spread like wildfire online. Mainly because of the Dean Ambrose connection, I would imagine. But yeah, it's going to happen soon, and the pressure's on. The pressure's on now because the last 2 interviews have gone down very well.
Sting was announced to be the first inductee of the 2016 WWE Hall of Fame. Rock said he's gonna be a special part of WrestleMania, but he didn't say it was gonna be a match or the host of the show or whatever. Is there any possibility The Rock gets inducted in this year's class? And second question to this: who else do you see being inducted in this year's Hall of Fame class, James?
I don't think Rock will be inducted this year. I feel like if he was going to be inducted, he would absolutely be the first person. He would be their star inductee, and I think they always announce their star inductee first. Mm-hmm. So I think Sting is probably the main name this year. I also feel that Rock would probably go into the Hall of Fame on a year when he was having one last match, and I just have a feeling there is one more run with The Rock. I feel like he could probably have one more WrestleMania main event. I don't think that's going to happen this year. From what I've heard, and again, these aren't facts, these are just what I've read online, but apparently due to his insurance company that's covering him whilst he's working on a film, he's not actually allowed legally to step in the ring for an actual match. So it seems that the chances of him wrestling this year are very slim. But yeah, so I kind of feel like maybe next year is The Rock's year, Hall of Fame, final match, big send-off. Maybe that's the way to do it. In terms of other inductees, I mean, the ones that spring to mind, everyone's been talking about it, but is the fabulous Freebirds. They've got such a strong connection to Dallas and the scene down there back in the 70s, 80s. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a perfect fit. Other than that, I don't know. I always wonder to myself, when are they going to run out of talents to put into the Hall of Fame?
That's a good point.
Because, they do sort of 5 or 6 or 7 every year, and not everyone is worthy of a place in the Hall of Fame, I don't think. Coco Beware being one example. So, yeah, I slightly worry that they're going to run out sooner or later.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I mean, like, I know at times WWE seems to be reclusive of everything that's not WWE, but there's a lot of great talents out there that do deserve an opportunity in the WWE Hall of Fame, even though they've never been on WWE television. I mean, Gordon Soley is in the WWE Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest announcers of all time. So maybe you can look outside the box too sometimes when you're low on the major WWE-based stars. So I wonder how they're going to space it out for the next couple of years, because I doubt I'm going to see Batista or some of those guys inducted in the next 5 years. That's too early, in my opinion. I still think there's money left on the table, even though some of these guys are past their prime, but we'll see what happens. Let's go with a couple of fantasy booking scenarios before we let you go, buddy. Who walks out the Royal Rumble as WWE World Heavyweight Champion?
I've gone back and forth on this. I do think there are probably only a few options. I mean, on my show, Gorilla Position, this week, I suggested that maybe Big E would be a fun world champion coming out of the Rumble, because imagine him heading to the main event of WrestleMania with Kofi and Xavier as his mouthpieces on the way up there. I think that would be incredible. But being serious for a moment, I think I'm probably going to have to go with Triple H. I think that makes the most sense. And he hasn't even been announced for the match.
True. He has the power, even if he doesn't enter at 30, he still has the power to enter himself into the match and win. So that's not a bad idea. Let me ask you this one. Kevin Owens versus Undertaker at WrestleMania. Yeah or nay?
100% yes. That is the match I want. I think if you're going to match... The thing is with Undertaker now, he is he's this incredible character, this dead man. You know, he's a proper kind of cartoon character back from, well, I mean, I know he made his debut in 1990, but as you mentioned earlier, you know, the kind of 80s over-the-top superhero cartoon-style character, you know, he fits that mold. But I think now when everything is so real, you know, we're in the reality era, I think if he's matched up against someone like Kevin Owens, who is just your everyday guy, who speaks the truth, you know, in a very similar way to CM Punk a few years back, you know, he fits that mold so well, and I just think a program with these two could be so special. And I think if you give Kevin Owens the free reign to do what he wants with promos, you know, behind the mic on Raw and SmackDown heading into WrestleMania, I think you'll have something genuinely very, very special. Because it's you know, I mean, Kevin Owens personally told me he'd love to, you know, his dream match is with either Undertaker or Brock Lesnar. And I think out of the two, at this stage, I'd want to see Owens Taker before Taker retires.
Daniel Bryan, will we see him wrestle in person at WrestleMania 32 this year? Yes or no?
My heart says yes. And when you played the theme tune of your show, Daniel Bryan's theme, I felt a bit sad because I'm so desperate to see him back. But at the same time, if he's not fit to wrestle on this scale, then I don't want him to, because, you know, he genuinely is the nicest guy. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever interviewed. He's just such a sweet human being, and I wouldn't want him to have a serious injury. So if he needs to retire, then that's what I want to see him do. But having said that, I would, of course, absolutely love to see him at WrestleMania 32. And if he makes a surprise entrance in the Rumble, then I will be jumping out of my seat.
Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles is my guess. If all these rumors and shenanigans are confirmed, I think it'd be a best case scenario for both guys. Because I don't know if Nakamura is going to be part of WrestleMania this year. I really don't know. But I'm probably answering my own question already. But you would love to see Styles versus Daniel Bryan, right?
I mean, I would, from an in-ring perspective, of course. You know, AJ Styles is an incredible athlete. I've always been amazed at some of the stuff he's done in TNA. But I think, you know, we've been having this discussion on Gorilla Position. How do you bring in these new guys from New Japan Pro Wrestling if they do eventually sign and it all becomes official? Do you bring them in as the Balor Club with Finn as the leader? And is that an NXT thing, or is that a main roster thing? You know, and if you sort of imagine the Nexus angle, although that didn't end very well, I think that it could potentially be the way to go with these guys, and I think it would work better on the main roster as a bit of a takeover thing, excuse the pun, rather than on NXT programming. I think it'll have a lot more impact on the main roster. But I don't actually see AJ being in a singles match at WrestleMania at all. I think he'll either be down at NXT or perhaps the Balor Club, if they have formed and if this becomes reality, maybe they are involved in some sort of big team encounter at WrestleMania. But I actually don't think, you know, especially around WrestleMania time, the WWE crowd is, you know, it's a mainstream crowd. It's not just the diehards watching, you know, and a large proportion of the audience won't know who AJ is. True. Because TNA is not that big, and he's had no exposure on WWE TV, and I don't believe any of those guys really, unless the Balor Club has arrived on Raw and taken over TV in a similar way to how Nexus did it against John Cena. Unless that's happened, I don't think people like AJ and Nakamura will actually get the reactions that we think they will, because a lot of the crowd won't know who they are.
That's a good point. I have one last question, and this is an interesting booking scenario, and I think your partner Rob Lee will like this too. The Authority's been going around for 3 years now. I think the best case scenario for the product and WWE going forward in 2016 is if the Authority puts their power on the line at WrestleMania this year.
That's exactly what I have said on the show before. I feel like more so than perhaps any other WrestleMania in the past, this show in Dallas on the 3rd of April, I think it is.
Yeah.
This show needs some big attraction matches, and when I say attraction, I don't mean kind of 5-star work rate, beautiful selling masterpieces, clinics, but I mean big attraction affairs like a Ronda Rousey, Stephanie McMahon, or exactly that. I think what I've suggested on the show is perhaps Vince and Triple H end up having a fight, or a match rather, and the power of the WWE is on the line. Winner takes all, literally, and perhaps this year at WrestleMania, perhaps that is Vince McMahon's swan song. I think fighting for control of the company is actually a big storyline that a lot of people will buy into, and potentially that might be the way we go.
James, tell the peeps out there where they can find you on social media and your great interviews and your podcasts.
Thank you for the opportunity to come on the show. I really appreciate it, and it's just, it's a lot of fun just chatting WWE for half an hour. So, happy to do it anytime. If people have enjoyed it and want to hear more, then they can listen to Gorilla Position podcast. We drop every Wednesday on iTunes. Just head to iTunes and type in Gorilla Position. And we're also at talksport.com/WWE. And the show, you can stream the show from that website, and that site is also populated with lots of WWE news stories that are uploaded every day by Rob Lee, who joins me on the show every week, who's an acclaimed journalist over here in the UK. And on social media, I'm at JDScoop82, don't ask me why, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And my YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Delow, and Delow is spelled DELOW.
The Beast Incarnate. James, this is a pleasure, man. First time getting to talk to you. You're a really, really cool guy. I love your podcast. I hope I get the opportunity to meet you in person in Dallas this year, and I would love to have you back on the show sometime.
Yeah, well, man. I didn't realize you saw me at WrestleMania last year. If you see me in Dallas, come and say hello, and we'll have a drink.
Absolutely. Talk to you later, buddy.
Cool. Cheers, Josh.